And good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar on brain health, exercise, and Tai Chi. My guest this morning, wait a minute. I'm Dianne Bailey, the creator of the Open the Door to Tai Chi system. And my guest this morning for this webinar is Ryan Glatt. He is an expert in brain health. And I thought I'd let him kind of give you some more of his background, but I wanted to tell you how Ryan and I met. It's a very interesting story. I had already started teaching Tai Chi, been teaching Tai Chi for many, many years, and had created this certification to help people learn how to teach Tai Chi. And I got a phone call from a guy named Ryan Glatt, and I had no clue who he was, had no idea. And so in the message, he said that he was studying Qigong and he just wanted to connect with me. And I thought, what the heck, I'll give him a call. And he had really gotten my information from FAI, the Functional Aging Institute, which is my partner with the Tai Chi certification. And he and I talked. He was interested. He was already going down the path of being an expert in brain health. He was already studying brain health and really connecting what exercise does for brain health. But he was also interested in that he was doing some Qigong himself, and he was interested in what Tai Chi, how that interacted with exercise and brain health. And so that started this very long journey. That was about 3 years ago and now we've really connected in that, yes, Tai Chi is an important piece of the puzzle of brain health. And I really appreciate what Ryan's doing as far as bringing this whole idea together for the fitness industry, because we need to be concerned with brain health. So Ryan, I'll let you take it away and introduce yourself, and we're looking forward to it.
Yes, thank you. It's certainly been a fun journey working with you over the past few years. Certainly a good amount of this, but generally moving up, right?
Right.
And it's been great collaborating with you on ideas, on potential studies, on programmatic solutions. I think it's only going to get more and more interesting as time goes on.
Yes.
So without ado, I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. All right. And then y'all have seen my face already, so I'm going to stop my video. All right. Okay, here we go. So can you see my screen okay, Dianne?
Yes, we can. Sounds
okay.
Good.
Great. So today's talk is on brain health and Tai Chi, programming for optimal brain health with mindful movements in mind. All right. So quick background on me. I got my bachelor's in exercise science several years ago. I've been a personal trainer for 10 years, so, although that's kind of weird to say. I started training illegally when I was 17. I grew up overweight as a kid, and I was playing a lot of video games, living quite a sedentary lifestyle. And the way I lost weight was actually through doing a game called Dance Dance Revolution, which many of you have heard of. And it's basically an exer game where you exercise and game at the same time. And since I was addicted to games, I lost weight doing that. I also had ADHD-induced concussion. And so it was quite an interesting thing growing up. But fitness truly changed my life physically, socially, and cognitively. And through that, I became interested in brain health in parallel to the process of exercise. But there wasn't a whole lot of neuroscience to study in the field of exercise. And so after graduating and sort of pursuing a parallel interest in physical therapy, I did not pursue physical therapy and instead pursued neuroscience, becoming a brain health coach through the Amen clinics, becoming a functional aging specialist to start working primarily with the aging demographic. I'm an NSCA certified personal trainer and currently in progress. I'm getting a certified special population specialist and a certified exercise physiologist qualification. And then I'm about a little over halfway through a master's in applied neuroscience from King's College of London. So my primary interest is to see the intersection and the marriage of exercise science and neuroscience / brain health. And I think we could call it applied neuroscience, because we're not just saying, this part of the brain does this when you exercise. What we're really saying is this is the practical aspect of neuroscience. I might even call it health neuroscience. I love to call it kinesiological neuroscience. It sounds a little cheesy, but something that merges the two fields together. Probably my favorite working title that I would imagine in the future that would make sense is exercise neurophysiology. So we have exercise physiology, which focuses on the peripheral physiological systems, but neurophysiology would focus on the central systems and would look at the effects of exercise on the brain in that manner. So let's just settle for exercise neurophysiology. I'm not that yet. There's probably only one person in the world who's called that, and he's a PhD. But I'd like to see that being a thing. Just yesterday, I flew back from Florida from the first ever Society for Neurosports meeting. And this was actually the very first time there was a professional meeting of neuroscientists and exercise physiologists and physical therapists and nutritionists coming together to discuss the intersections of exercise and neuroscience and sport. And it was really great to see that, because I've been wanting to see that for a long time. So this is an emerging field. I don't want to say I'm a unicorn, but there's certainly a lot of people coming out of the woodwork who have been interested in this for a very long time. And I'm excited to see it become a legitimate field. Today, we're going to talk about how you can apply it to your practice and consider brain health as part of your repertoire here. So globally, this little animation here is demonstrating the incidence risk of dementia across the world. We know it's growing exponentially. We know it is an epidemic. We see that 131.5 million by 2050 globally is going to be the number of people living with dementia. That is quite a lot. And so when we look at what trainers are typically doing when it comes to weight loss or pain management or performance outcomes, all those things are important, but the two biggest costs are cognitive decline and dementia, and the only one above that is depression and other mental health costs. And so I believe the biggest issues of the modern era are of the mind and brain. And given that personal trainers and fitness and health professionals are well suited with one of the biggest tools called exercise, I think we should address that. 25% of 65-year-old Americans live with what's called mild cognitive impairment, which is sort of a mid-stage between normal aging and dementia, in which several cognitive processes could be negatively affected. There's a couple different types of mild cognitive impairment, but we're not going to get into that now. But as of now, 25% of 65-year-old Americans and up live with MCI. 10% of 65-year-olds and up have dementia. And only 1 in 9 Americans 45 and older say they experience thinking declines. This is going to go up. And certainly the statistic is not reflective of different type of thinking declines. I think we can all relate to a sensation or a state in which we feel like we're not thinking optimally, either due to lifestyle factors or other factors. But there's clearly a demand for brain health oriented services, considering that people are experiencing cognitive issues. Now, can the fitness industry actually make an impact? So we've presented some statistical models of this problem here. Another statistic is 5.8 million people living with dementia in the US. This was a 2019 statistic. There's 5.8 million people. This is continuing to grow. Approximately, let's say we have about 400,000 trainers in the US. This was 2018 statistic. This isn't including health coaches, exercise physiologists, physical therapists. This is just personal trainers. And I'd like to think this is growing as well. So if we divide that 5.8 million by this number, it's only 16 clients per trainer. I find this very motivating. And while I don't think that we can educate every single personal trainer on brain health properly, I think we can get the message out there enough where we could start to make this vision a reality. And I'm also not saying that every trainer should train 16 people with dementia. It's rather representative of a very large statistic that can really seem overwhelming. But if you just take the fitness industry, just personal trainers, look how much of an impact we could actually make if we were implementing interventions that were evidence-based and or evidence-led to improve cognition or slow cognitive decline. So this is very motivating to me. When I saw that 5.8 million, I knew I wanted to help make an impact, and I'm sure you do as well. but there's nothing as soothing and exciting as seeing that just our market alone could make a significant impact for all 5.8 million people. Now, these statistics are going to fluctuate. It's not the perfect metaphor or the perfect, not metaphor, but perfect equation. But hopefully you're motivated by this as much as I am. But what's needed to fill the gap? Well, first, education's needed in health neuroscience theory and application. We also need to learn how to build a network of allied health professionals, such as brain health-oriented physicians, to address brain health. And then we also need programming solutions, brain-informed exercise programming, techniques, and solutions, some of which we will review today. In Tai Chi, I believe to be a significant part of that programmatic solution. This programming ideally needs to reflect goals of brain health. So instead of saying what I do for my clients is good for brain health, which it is, I'm not going to say that anything you do is bad for brain health unless you're really fatiguing or overtraining or hurting somebody, but or they just really don't enjoy what you do. But really, we want to change it from a side effect, i.e., I know what I'm doing is good for the brain because exercise is good for the brain, to actual specific programmatic strategies, i.e., you have this goal of brain health, therefore I'm providing this exercise prescription or plan. So that's where we need to go in order to fill that gap. So let's look at a concept, really it's a hypothesis called cognitive reserve. We can take two aging brains that can have the same structural characteristics here, but one of them could have a low cognitive reserve and one of them could have a high cognitive reserve. A cognitive reserve is like your gas tank throughout your lifespan. And the reason we might see improvements in older adults, for example, let's say they have mild cognitive impairment and we do a Tai Chi intervention, the reason we might see improvements in the short term is probably because we boosted cognitive reserve, but there may not be any structural changes. We'll go over the difference in what it would actually take to make structural changes in the brain, but focusing on the concept of cognitive reserve, we want to improve cognitive reserve because clearly it can slow this cognitive decline. And even if one is quote unquote destined to get dementia, which is very hard to determine, not just by genetics alone, but other biomarkers and tons of other risk factors, we can really delay the amount of time that this person experiences cognitive decline and also enhance the quality of life for this individual. So if neuropathology is an eventual stage or end goal, not that it would be a goal, we can actually delay that hopefully significantly by increasing cognitive reserve. Now, what improves cognitive reserve? Well, you've probably heard that exercise improves cognitive reserve. If we look at the upper left square, we see modifiable health factors. Exercise is sort of a bullet point underneath that, as is stress management, sleep hygiene, and nutrition. But we have a variety of other things that impact cognitive reserve, things like educational attainment, social support, positive affect, which just means good mood, stimulating activities or novel experiences rather, and cognitive training or cognitive stimulation. All of those will impact cognitive reserve and hopefully improve cognition, behavior, activities of daily living, and therefore quality of life. Now, here's what I would like to argue. Instead of exercise just being a bullet point underneath modifiable health factors, I believe we can integrate a lot more of these components into our exercise sessions, or at least in the coaching we provide to our clients and patients, that exercise is only one piece, which can yield significant changes in cognitive reserve, by the way. It's at the top of the World Health Organization's list of probably one of the most evidence-based things to likely improve cognitive reserve, slow cognitive decline, reduce incidence risk of dementia. So exercise is at the top. But how can we further enhance that? Well, let's look at positive affect. Having a good mood, releasing beneficial neurotransmitters, having positive mood states, improving outcomes on mental health. All of that is important, and I think we should strive to do that within the context of the interventions we're providing, both inside and outside our sessions. Also, social support. This is certainly the benefit of group classes, but also the benefit of having good rapport with your client. Then there's stimulating activities and novel experiences. This is where I think a big opportunity is. We can actually provide activities that are stimulating and not mindless. We can provide novel experiences that aren't routine. And so I think we need to look at not just training exercises, but we're trainers of skill. We're trainers of novel experiences, and therefore being able to actually provide more novel input into the brain, as that is theoretically going to improve cognitive reserve. Then we have cognitive training, and we'll talk about how Tai Chi plays a role in this, but more cognitively demanding exercise modalities should be incorporated alongside exercise, either in parallel or simultaneously. We're going to talk about how simultaneous cognitive physical training theoretically, and what research is starting to demonstrate, can improve cognition better than cognitive training or exercise alone. But I think incorporating all these different factors just into an exercise session or an exercise plan can thoroughly enhance the potential impact on cognitive reserve that would be positive for our clients. Now, what are all the benefits of exercise on the brain? Well, there's quite a lot. A lot of people just say one of them. For example, if we look over here at molecular changes, BDNF, you may have heard of brain-derived neurotropic factor. Dr. John Rady, the author of the book Spark, termed this miracle grow for the brain. It's a protein that's released that accelerates neuroplastic change, and it's released in response to exercise. And studying BDNF has been around since the early 2000s, if not a little bit earlier. And that's a molecular change. That's a significant mechanism here, but there's also other mechanisms like IGF-1, irisin. These are other growth factors and myokines that are released at what we would call the micro level. The micro level. These things are molecular changes in proteins, and also there's changes in neurons, these brain cells. There's a process called neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells. So both that and molecular changes at the micro level. At the macro level, we might have structural changes, changes in brain activity, changes in the volume of the brain. Simply put, this is changes in how the brain functions or if the brain grows or shrinks. And so this is called the macro level. And so exercise can impact the macro level, i.e. by increasing the size of the hippocampus, an area of the brain responsible for learning and memory. You may have heard that before. And then we also have behavioral changes. We can impact cognition, things like attention, memory, speed of processing. And we can also impact mood, reducing depressive symptoms of anxiety, positive mood states. And then exercise in itself is a behavior. So if we are going to exercise, which improves brain health, it's this vicarious cycle in which we're actually probably going to exercise more. So looking at exercise through the lens of brain health may actually be the secret to getting people to exercise more. Now, what are the different types of brain changes? Well, we have neurogenesis, which we briefly defined earlier. It's the continuous generation of new neurons in the brain. Then we have new synapses, which is not a structural change, but a functional change. New skills and experiences create new neural connections. So going back to that novel activities square that contributed to cognitive reserve, if we see that new skills, something like Tai Chi perhaps, and experiences create neural connections, we can generate new synapses, which is the connections between these new brain cells. And if we repeat and practice, we can actually strengthen these neural connections. But if we don't practice, they become weakened. Now, there's this sort of generalized use it or lose it concept out there. There's both pros and cons to saying that. You could say that generally applies to this. But we're not really looking at individual synapses or connections in the brains of our clients. And it's not always a structural change. Sometimes it's just a functional change. But this is a helpful illustration to see the types of functional and structural changes that can occur with the brain in response to exercise. Now, what is the time course of some of these adaptations? Well, if we look at the synapses, that space in between two neurons in which they're communicating, if you look at those little red dots there, those are neurotransmitters. Let's theorize that could be dopamine, for instance, or acetylcholine perhaps. So we have synaptic modification, which can occur in milliseconds. Now, is it significant synaptic modification? Is this something that's going to carry over into my everyday life? Am I going to feel the difference? Probably not. But we do have these electrical signals that are sent immediately. And you probably have felt changes in cognition or mood immediately after exercise, even just a few minutes, and that could probably be due to some synaptic modification. Then structurally, we have the branching of synapses and dendrites that can take several hours. We have the creation of new brain cells, which can occur earlier, but typically significantly occurs over several days. And then we have changes at the neuronal network. These are networks of neurons. This is a bit more significant. That can take several weeks and months. And then we have higher level brain changes, things that will be detectable on brain imaging that looks at the size of different brain structures. And that can take several months and years, sometimes as early as several weeks. And this is what I think we're really after, is higher level brain changes, considering that as we age, just like muscle volume decreases, sarcopenia is a risk, so does brain volume. And so we're interested in maintaining as much brain volume, both globally, i.e. via increasing gray matter volume and maintaining that as much as possible. And also locally, maybe maintaining the size of the hippocampus, which decreases with age and has been attributed to memory problems. I think higher level brain changes and structural changes should be a primary goal of our interventions. And in order to look at that, we would need to partner with physicians that can order such imaging. Also at the level of the hippocampus, we can see that in runners compared to controls, I believe this is in mice, not humans, we see that there's more neurons indicated by these black rice looking things. In the middle photo, we see significantly more neurons in the hippocampus here. And then at the more of the micro level, we can see the sprouting of these axons and dendrites because of exercise. And so this is a view as the micro level that might perpetuate change at the higher level. And then this image is from a study, it was rather criticized, but I think it drives an interesting point home, that these red areas represent gray matter. Gray matter is a type of tissue in the brain that is modifiable by physical activity. And you can see there's quite a lot of red activity here. It's actually not activity, it's just a red shading indicating that those areas of gray matter, some research has showed at one point that that particular area has been modifiable or influenced by physical activity. So the title of this paper is that over 80% of the brain's gray matter is modifiable by physical activity. That's a very motivating statistic. And even if it's prone to some issues in the way that was kind of statistically modeled, I do find this incredibly motivating to look at as a health and fitness professional, knowing that I could make a change on a significant amount of gray matter volume just by my interventions. So if you look at that red area, that is what I would call potential. Now, what does ACSM or the Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans say about what amount of exercise is needed for brain health? Well, this recommendation's been around for a while, and just recently they've modified it to include cognitive benefits. But for substantial health benefits, adults should do this 150 minutes to 300 minutes per week of moderate to vigorous intensity aerobic exercise or equivalent, with additional benefits for more than 150 minutes, with additional benefits for what we call neuromotor training, which can include balance training, coordination training, things like Tai Chi, and also additional benefits for resistance training. Now, this is on the right track. If we were talking about specifically for cognition, there's a better way forward, a better prescription perhaps, which we will discuss. But I would like to, I'm both grateful and angry at this. I'm grateful that this exists to provide a nice general baseline, which we should aim to get to ourselves and for all of our clients. But I'm also thinking, you know, this doesn't really create an exciting job for me if this was my only goal, which is to get people to this level. It doesn't matter how they get there. Similar to how we might discuss nutrition, where let's say I have a 5,000 calorie goal, I think how we get there does matter. I hope I'm not eating, sweets and, really simple carbohydrates. I'd like to think that the substance and the nutrition quality of what I'm eating does matter in relation to how I get to those calories. I would also like to borrow from that and parallel that with exercise. How do we get to this 150 minutes? And I believe the way we get there through what I might call movement nutrition does matter for brain health. And so this is not a perfect graphic, but I created this graphic as a result of at least 50 different articles. And I wanted to kind of provide an interesting perspective on how regional brain changes might be specific to different types of exercise. Now, there's a lot of issues with this approach. This idea of isolating brain structures isn't really a thing. We might not want to go with just regional brain changes. We might want to go with networks. So there's networks that connect these different changes functionally together. But I think it's a helpful theoretical concept to display. So we have different lobes of the brain here, and these different lobes are likely to be stimulated by a variety of different exercises. So if we just did cardiovascular exercise, we'd certainly increase whole brain volume. We'd certainly increase temporal lobe volume in the hippocampus where that it lives in the temporal lobes. We'd certainly increase frontal lobe volume. But I think there's an opportunity to do other types of exercise that incorporate skill learning and resistance training and motor learning and visual input and coordinative inputs to get more of a whole brain sort of approach to our exercise adaptations. So I won't spend too much time on this, but you can see that in different lobes, there's different activities or at least traits that might target those areas. For example, let's look at the lower right, the cerebellum, responsible for coordination. Certainly skill learning, open skill activities, which we will define, coordinative activities are likely to improve the function and volume of this area. If we go to the left, we'll look at the temporal lobes. This is where the hippocampus lives. It's a deeper brain structure. And this is likely to respond best to cardiovascular exercise, general physical activity. It's going to result in learning and memory improvements and neurogenesis, specifically in that hippocampus. If we look at the frontal lobe, where this is responsible for what we might call executive functions, things like higher level cognitive functions such as reasoning, planning, organizing, short-term memory, allocating attention. More cognitively demanding activities such as Tai Chi, boxing, even things like weightlifting and resistance training, which don't get a lot of representation as a cognitively demanding or a brain-enhancing modality, but really the research is starting to show that this is the case. And there is a lot of cognitive components to resistance training. And as I mentioned, Tai Chi, which I would just clump under mind-body exercise, all of that is likely to target the frontal lobe through increased gray matter, improved executive functions, and more efficient brain activity, in which, as we age, we have less efficient brain activity in this region. Then we have the parietal lobes, which is likely to be increased with visuospatial demands, object-based demands, sensory-rich activities. We can improve function and structure there, as well as task switching abilities by doing some of these interventions. And then occipital lobe, which is responsible for vision. If we have visuospatial demands, visual attention demands, motor control and stimulation demands, this is likely to increase the volume and function of this area as well. So more research is needed. I can't wait to do more of these infographics, but hopefully this has been helpful for visualizing how theoretically some of these different modalities can impact different regions of the brain. Now, I mentioned open versus closed skills. What is the difference? In open skills, the environment's constantly changing, movements have to be adapted, and they're predominantly externally paced. And in closed skills, it's a stable and predictable environment. Movements have a clear beginning and end, and the performer knows what to do and when. Now, which one's best for brain health? I'll let you think about it for a second. You're probably thinking open skills. Now, that's correct and incorrect. We do not want to villainize what the fitness industry has been thus far, which is typically closed skills. Most of the research on aerobic exercise and resistance exercise is typically performed in a closed skill environment, and those have shown significant benefits on cognition. So we know that this provides benefit, but what I would like to think is a missing element of nutrition from our exercise programs is, in fact, this open skill type of approach. Now, it doesn't have to be tennis. When we're teaching someone skills, they just don't have to be predictable. They have to be constantly changing. They have to be a little variable and a bit novel. And I think the opportunity in delivering interventions that are open skill is that we are a person that can actually adapt these interventions and teach skills rather than just rep counters that can actually just count reps. Both are very important. I'd just like to argue that open skills are a missing element of our exercise programs. And certainly Tai Chi can be a great open skill. If we look at this spectrum, I think we can plot different activities on this spectrum to get as much real estate on this spectrum as possible, which my best educated guess would be that would be the best for brain health. Now, let's look at the neuronal level. This is a theoretical concept as to what happens with and without training, with and without cognitive stimulation. So when it comes to no training, these red dots and white dots represent neurons. The red dots are neurons that we have. If we don't train, we lose neurons. We know that we're all declining with age. If we exercise, we gain new neurons. And certainly while we gain more neurons, net neurons rather, than if we didn't exercise, we do lose some. So there's a neurogenesis effect, but there's also a pruning effect that occurs. Now with mental training or mental stimulation, we actually don't lose as much neurons because we're maintaining the functional activity of those neurons. But when we combine mental and physical training, we glean the new neurons from the neurogenesis process that comes from physical exercise, but we can further integrate them and enhance their survival through incorporating mental activity. So that's a very unique opportunity there. Now let's talk about Tai Chi. How does this all relate? So Tai Chi has been described as an exercise, a dance, a method of achieving mental peace and relaxation, and a philosophy of life. It includes coordination of continuous rhythmic movements with dynamic weight shifting and single limb support. So that's one definition for Tai Chi. It's a relatively comprehensive one, but let's describe its components. So I think the first thing is that there's coordinated movement. If we think back to that brain chart, we're probably targeting aspects of the cerebellum. And considering anytime we learn a new skill, there's cognitive aspects of motor learning, probably that prefrontal cortex. Then we have attentional control, which is further going to enhance the demands on the frontal cortex. We have aspects of relaxation, which is going to modulate brain activity in the areas of the brain responsible for fear and stress, like the amygdala. And then we also have rhythmic breathing, which is going to impact other deeper brain structures. But all of these characteristics of Tai Chi are typically present. And I think they're excellent characteristics to have, as they're not always present in various modalities of exercise. Now, I apologize for the blurriness here, but this is a great graphic that takes a specific type of Tai Chi Chuan, and takes cardiovascular fitness status, motor fitness status, movement coordination, social interaction, and meditation. And we could theorize as to why all these different things would be beneficial for the brain, both from a structural, functional, or cognitive reserve standpoint, and therefore impact brain structure and function over time, therefore improving cognition. So you can see that Tai Chi is one of these modalities that combines cognitive and physical stimulus simultaneously, as well as other things that have been shown to be beneficial, like meditation and social stimulation, which is very, very important as you age, and most people have challenges getting those type of inputs. Let's talk about some of the other components of Tai Chi. There's mindfulness, as we've discussed. So as a mind-body exercise, Tai Chi implements cognitive tools of both visualization and focused internal awareness. There's this concept called dual tasking, where we are having a physical and a cognitive task. This is both exteroceptive and interoceptive, meaning I am watching a teacher while trying to move myself. I am checking in with myself as I'm trying to move and get a routine correct. I'm tapping into my memory processes, my procedural memories as I'm moving my body. So this trains attention, in which the eyes might focus on the leading arm and the mind focusing on the breathing. So our attention's split in a good way, because while typically in the real world, we're not really focused on our breath or moving very slowly, this has various positive effects on attention and executive functioning. There's also autonomic nervous system regulation benefits, where Tai Chi increases self-awareness at the same time as relaxing the mind and body. And there is cognitive load that includes movement recall, switching, spatial orientation, and all of those require attentional and executive control. We've talked about the cerebellum, and the cerebellum is responsible for the quality control of thoughts and movement accuracy. So it's not just coordination, it's also playing a role in thought and emotion. And complex motor skills increase neurogenesis and angiogenesis of this region. Another fun Snapple fact is that over 50% of the brain's specific type of neurons are packed into this area. And then coordinated exercise can increase focus, both because of the cerebellar activity, but also that frontal lobe activity. Another fun Snapple fact, it's probably too long to write on a Snapple cap here, but there's something called the thalamus, and through this thalamic tract, the cerebellum can actually connect to the frontal cortex. So I think cognitively and physically demanding modalities such as Tai Chi are really interesting for addressing that relationship. Now that's all fine and dandy, but what does research say the ideal dosage is for Tai Chi for brain health? So the minimum may be twice a week for 20 minutes. I think that's a very realistic dosage. Also 50 minutes 3 times a week for 1 year seems to generate the most cognitive benefits from looking at these Tai Chi studies. And 6 months of Tai Chi equals better memory and BDNF concentration. And 12 weeks of that, you'll probably reach a certain level of improved executive functions. Certainly the longer you stick with it and the more challenging this becomes as you get more skilled, the better the results will be. We'll come back to this, but let's look at this review from Dr. Joyce Gomez-Osman, who is a physical therapist and a rehab neuroscientist who led this great article. It's a systematic review, and it's a systematic review of 98 randomized controlled trials of a total of 11,061 participants over the age of 73. And she's trying to get to the ideal dosage of exercise for brain health. What is that? So in this review, 59% of that 11,000 were normal, healthy older adults. 26% had mild cognitive impairment, and 15% had dementia. In addition, 58% of these people did not regularly exercise before enrolling in some sort of study. So what did she find? 52 hours of exercise across all these different studies, 98 different studies of different modalities, resistance training, aerobic training, motor and coordination training, Tai Chi. 52 hours of exercise seemed to be the number that needed to be hit to get the most significant benefits to cognition, regardless of the modality. And this led to the largest improvements in processing speed and executive functioning. Both are functions that start to change first with aging. And it consisted of different modalities, including Tai Chi. So look at that. So compared to the 150 minutes, I think this is a different approach. If we look at what is necessary to achieve cognitive benefit, 52 hours is probably not the magic number, but it's definitely a great place to start. And if we were to take the 150 minutes, it's probably about 2 60-minute sessions, 1 30-minute session. But if we took this 52 hours and divided it by 12, assuming we're trying to get 52 hours over a 3-month period, 12 weeks, we're probably going to be at 4 60-minute sessions and 1 30-minute session. I believe that's correct. So you can also fit this in over a 6-month period, but I think a nice aggressive 3-month period is certainly a attractive strategy. It also requires more of your help and services. But if behaviorally this individual is looking to incorporate this over a longer duration, that's certainly possible. Now, with that said, let's go to this. So what's an EPAP? It stands for Exercise and Physical Activity Program. This is pulled from the Brain Health Trainer course, which we'll discuss at the end here. But if I was to incorporate a multi-modal exercise program, this is a microcycle. So it's just over a week period. And I want to hit those 150 minutes. This is more than 150. So 60, 20, so that's 180. Okay, we have 200. So it's almost 300 minutes, it looks like, unless my math is really bad. So we have multi-component exercise, and what that is, it's aerobic training plus resistance training plus balance training. It's about 20 minutes each at a moderate intensity 3 times a week. Multi-component training has been found to have really good effects on cognition, sometimes better than a singular modality. And it's a nice way to get the dosages of these different beneficial modalities at once. Then we have dance and Tai Chi incorporated in here. And this person wanted to improve attention. And the Tai Chi is on Tuesdays, it's done in a group. Tai Chi on Saturday, it's done at home. And with dance, it's a skill-based type of dance versus a choreography type of dance. And this whole program, according to research, theoretically would enhance attention better than just say aerobic exercise. And we're not just saying it, we're only doing Tai Chi. that would be foolish. We're doing Tai Chi as an essential component alongside other skill learning in multi-component training programs. So this is how I would believe, assuming that you're working out 7 times a week. I know that's rather intimidating to some, but I also have 2-day, 3-day, 4-day versions of this where you're trying to stick to the minimum recommendations. And certainly you can adapt this based on the individual's resources, the availability, the motivation of the individual. There's all sorts of factors, right? But if we were to look at what might be a great program that incorporates Tai Chi that could improve attention, I think this would be a good model. Okay, let me rush through my statistics here. So this is all great, but if I do incorporate brain health oriented programming and Tai Chi, what can it really do for my business? So I can promise you that demand is very high for brain health services and programs. So in terms of attracting new people into your business, there's a big opportunity there. Currently, people don't know to ask you about this, but upon getting more brain health oriented education and qualifications, this can change. People will start to ask, and there's strategies for promoting yourself as someone who looks at brain health as an important outcome measure. Also retaining individuals. So brain health is a long-term goal. Once you've improved someone's knee pain or weight loss, certainly you have the rapport that can allow someone to stay with you, you can develop new goals. But I think brain health is an excellent goal. 1, because it's novel. 2, because it's a long-term goal. And 3, because I think everyone does have this fear. While some people may come to you and they state a physical goal, I really think they're coming to trainers for a brain health oriented goal, whether it's behavioral, neurological, whether it's based in fear. And I think everyone would agree, regardless of socioeconomic status, that they're scared of losing their minds, scared of losing their brain function. And so I think everyone would agree that they would want to prevent this cognitive decline or slow it as much as possible. And if they were educated, well, first you need to be educated, but then if they're educated, because you're educated, they're going to know the benefits and they're going to want to stay with you a lot longer. And adding Tai Chi adds a lot of value. So knowing the benefits of Tai Chi is one thing, but being able to provide it, and it's typically very hard to find in a way that's accessible, affordable, and enjoyable, I think this is a big value add. And then impact. So whether it's Tai Chi, multi-component exercise, or both, the goal is not just being able to functionally play with their grandkids, but to be able to remember their grandkids' names. And if this is the goal of our clients, our job is a lot more impactful. I think the health and fitness industry is a very purpose-driven, fulfilling industry. But I think if we add this element of brain health, I think that further enhances the impact that we can have on people. And it also enhances the purpose, the good feelings you have about doing what you do. Personally, since changing my entire practice to focus on brain health, I feel I'm making a much more significant difference in my life and the lives of others. So I really can't imagine doing it any other way. Not that improving ankle dorsiflexion can't truly change someone's life. I believe it can. That's what I was doing before. But I think impacting brain health is a big thing for a lot of people. And I once again, I can't imagine doing it any other way. So how do we actually improve our base of knowledge of how to programmatically design these brain health strategies? So I've been working on this for quite a long time. Even when I was speaking with Dianne that many years ago, I was working on this concept called the Brain Health Trainer course. 6 months ago, we launched it alongside the Functional Aging Institute, and it's been approved by ACE, ACSM, NASM, even the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches for continued education credits. And it's a 10-hour course, approximately, that incorporates interactive graphics, neuroscience theory, turnkey programming solutions, that is all done in an online e-learning self-paced environment. I'm happy to say we've had 300 health and fitness professionals go through this course. It's nowhere near the 356,000, but hopefully you can help us reach that number. This course is available now. And because you've been so kind with your time and interest, Dianne and I are partnering to offer you a great deal in which you can go to brainhealthtrainer.com and you can use the code Tai Chi Bundle, not just for $200 off the Brain Health Trainer course, but you'll also get the free Tai Chi Daily Series, which is going to help you and your clients start to integrate Tai Chi into your practice. And so I'm really excited to offer this alongside Dianne, because I truly believe that Tai Chi and brain health go hand in hand. And without ado, I think we'll end the presentation and start taking some questions here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. This has been, there's been some chat in the background just about how fascinating it is with the connection to exercise and how the brain can be improved, that we're not just, I know functional exercise is important, but if we can actually be impacting the brain as well, this is awesome. We do have some questions. The first question comes from Jim. He says, Ryan, I work with collegiate students who have ADHD, dyslexia, processing speed issues, and other learning differences. What would be an appropriate dosage of these protocols for improved brain function and executive function? What would the appropriate dosage be?
That's a great question. I think it certainly depends on the population. I've very much biased myself towards the aging demographic, but the principles are relatively the same. If we looked at that exercise and physical activity program for attention, and I can go back to it here, this would be a great prescription, because for those individuals, they have a variety of needs, physiologically, cognitively, and I think all of, a variety of modalities would be helpful. Now, what's the downside of a lot of variability? The downside is that behaviorally, it's complex. So if I was to pick that one thing, and just do it twice a week, what would it be? Well, it certainly depends on the individual. I guess if you're going by the significance or the amount of evidence, probably aerobic training. But I think that's biased, and I think it's due to the times. I think we're going to learn a lot more about resistance training, the effects on the brain. I think we're going to learn a lot more about cognitive motor dual tasking in Tai Chi. I think any of these would be helpful. You're going to see improvements with any of these. I think the question is which is the modality or modalities that the person's going to do consistently enough to get results. But if possible, let's pretend this person is behaviorally motivated, this is a great program right here. This is, I would love to do this myself to manage my ADHD. So it really does depend what resources you have available, what the person's willing to do. I think it's a bigger question, but I think that program that I provided earlier is a great start.
Absolutely. Just to be able to think about focusing, and I've been through the Brain Health Trainer course, and it does help you break it down where these are things that are going to help with attention, or these are things that are going to help with memory. And like you said earlier, and you're not just targeting a certain area of the brain. It's actually a global impact, but there are things that we can do to kind of target those things that people need.
Definitely.
So,
I think the Brain Health Trainer course teaches this cognitive domain targeted approach, where what's a program for memory, what's a program for attention. That's both evidence-based, but there's also, for that particular strategy, there's not enough evidence, and more evidence is being done. So Dr. Joyce Gomez-Osman, the woman who did that randomized controlled trial, I was just actually talking to her on Saturday about this, and she thinks that would be a great strategy. And she's doing this research, and we're working on collaborating in some sort of capacity. And we are doing this research at my place of work, the Pacific Brain Health Center, to see if we can find these ideal prescriptions, right? So more research is needed, but I think it would be a great tool for physicians, healthcare providers, and ourselves, health and fitness professionals, to have enough data to assess someone and say, hey, based on your cognitive phenotype or your cognitive profile, this is what would be best for you. So that's the work we do. And some of it has to be your best educated guess, because research just hasn't caught up, but that's exactly where we'd like to go.
That's awesome. I have a question from Tracy. She says, I work with cancer patients who are experiencing chemo brain, and I recommend consistent movement and passively passively doing puzzles, but would something like this also help? it's essentially an interruption to the cognitive skills that could become permanent. What do you think about chemo brain?
Yes, definitely. And I'm really excited to do more work with Andrea Leonard on this, the founder of the Cancer Exercise Training Institute. We've been talking a lot about this, and I've had a lot of patients at the Brain Health Center that I work at come to me with chemo brain. And I think the question, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with chemo brain. It's not just the chemo. For example, in breast cancer survivors, you're also having hormonal interactions which affect brain function. Age is a factor as well. So it's not just the chemo. And if we believe that chemo might influence the development of something like mild cognitive impairment, we know that this approach does help for mild cognitive impairment and improving cognition, and for women's health issues, and for slowing down aging. So either directly or indirectly, it would help. I can't imagine that it wouldn't help. For chemo brain specifically, there's been a little bit of research done, but certainly more is needed. I mean, my answer would be yes. You're better off assuming that that would help and doing it, and it would probably help, than saying, oh, let's wait until more research happens. We're not going to do Tai Chi or cognitive motor training or a multimodal exercise program. I think it would help.
Well, and I want to interject too that part of the whole cancer experience is stress driven, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
absolutely.
That's where Tai Chi is a big piece of the puzzle, where it directly impacts and can reduce that stress level in your body, which is a big piece. You're not only exercising, but you're actually helping connect with that parasympathetic system and reducing the stress in your body.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And I think you can't really lose with that approach.
Right. And this is kind of connected to it. Brenda asks, in my meditation training, it's difficult for the brain to multitask. Is there a difference between dual task versus multitask?
Yes. Very good question. Multitasking bad, dual tasking good. Dual tasking specifically is one cognitive and one physical task performed at the same time. So walking while talking. Multitasking is when you're trying to do maybe two cognitive tasks at one time. That's not efficient nor healthy for cognitive resources. However, dual tasking is very real world. Walking while talking, walking while trying to get something out of your purse or backpack, walking while visually searching and paying attention in the grocery store. So dual task is different than multitask. So it is a good question. I want to go into it deeper, a little bit more further here. But it's a longer conversation as to the specific neural mechanisms as to why, but there is a difference, and multitasking bad, dual tasking good.
And again, with Tai Chi, this is something that it has shown. There are research studies I just read about how Tai Chi improved the dual task environment.
That's right. Your dual task ability. In dual task ability, like certain types of attention, certain types of memory, processing speed, all that normally declines with age, and those cognitive functions are accelerated in decline with neurodegenerative conditions. But dual task ability is something that goes alongside that. Dual task ability does decrease with age, but you can improve it. You can improve dual task ability. You can even improve dual task ability in someone with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. Yeah, so that's a very interesting area. And I believe we did have a question about teaching Tai Chi to people with dementia. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, that's where Sylvianne said, I find it challenging to teach Tai Chi to my clients with dementia. She says she works with clients that have MCI and dementia because they don't remember the sequence. She's approaching it by teaching a flow where they don't have to remember, they just follow. Any thoughts on that, Ryan, how that's improving?
Definitely. And Dianne, I'd love to work with you to create more substantial strategies for how to actually do this, because there's only so deep I can go with this. But the concept of procedural memories, unless you're really struggling with some sort of neurological insult or certain conditions, typically procedural memories, in which I can memorize a procedure, how to do something like a Tai Chi move or a Tai Chi sequence, is available to these individuals. But the amount of repetition required to encode that procedural memory is much greater. So we might be comparing how fast you might learn to how fast they might learn. but you might need to repeat a sequence or a move many, many times before they establish that procedural memory. So the learning potential is there, the dual task potential is there, the procedural memory development is there. You just have to change your strategy a little bit. I will say simplifying a routine or focusing on a high degree amount of repetition. Now, if you're repeating moves, that makes it so that you can't go through as many moves, right? So that's just probably what it would have to be, is focusing on a lot of repetition. And I train a lot of people with dementia, and I'll do these really complex stepping strategies where they have a big grid of 10 by 4 squares and they have to step on them in a specific order. And they remember it week to week because we practice it a lot. It's not the only thing we do. And they're always, they're not confident. I'm saying, do you remember this? I'm like, probably not, definitely not. And then I challenge them. I say, show me, just do your best. And they surprise me. And well, I'm not surprised because I know they can do it. They rather surprise themselves. So it's possible. I think the strategy you're employing of this movement flow and this follow along is really great because it also demands attention. So if you want to give a little bit more memory load, just teach one move and teach it repetitively until they feel they can translate it from week to week. And both you and they might be surprised. If you're having a variety of cognitive abilities there, it's certainly going to make it a little bit more difficult, but see how much repetition can change that.
And I think too, Sylviane, that it's beneficial to those who may not be in that mild cognitive impairment or dementia realm. The repetition is actually good for just quote unquote normal people as well. And that flow state is also very important. So, that is challenging to people. We have people coming into my studio who they don't necessarily have dementia. And, just remembering the different movements of Tai Chi is part of the process.
Yeah, heck, even for me, it's tough, right?
Yeah. Right. And that's part of the patience, that's part of the lifelong learning that is Tai Chi. And that's kind of that's one of the benefits that I like to point out, is that this isn't just a one and done event. This isn't a exercise that you can master in a day. This is something that is a lifelong learning event that will, for your life, be improving not only your physical function but also your brain function.
Indeed. And I will say that I think you're in Brisbane,
yeah.
Working on it. We are having the Healthy Aging Summit in that area in March. So come on by. I'll show you some strategies.
Oh, that'd be great. Yes. We have one more question from Elspeth. She says, is it the new learning or the mind-body balance, or just oxygen to the brain that makes Tai Chi good for brain health? And we kind of went over this. She actually sent this in before the webinar, but I want to still answer her directly. What do you think about that?
The answer would be yes, but let me shed a little bit more detail on that. So there's different mechanisms. There's structural changes in the brain that may contribute to cognitive improvement. There's functional changes in the brain. From the level of the autonomic nervous system, if we are really stressed, we're probably blocking efficient cognitive processes. And we know that Tai Chi and meditation and mind-body practices can improve cognitive function. So from a stress mechanism, it improves it. Even though Tai Chi is not a cardiovascular modality, it has been shown to improve measures of cardiovascular health and blood pressure. And blood pressure management is brain health. So there's been a lot of research showing that if you improve cardiovascular measures, you improve brain health. And so it's not purely oxygen to the brain, it's blood and other cardiovascular measures. But cardiovascular health is brain health in a lot of ways. And we know that if we increase heart rate, which Tai Chi is unlikely to do, but other modalities will increase the hardware of the brain. But from a skill development standpoint, we want to look at the software of the brain. And the software of the brain, those functional changes, are likely to be modulated by these skills. And so we want to both increase hardware and increase software. And so I would like to argue that it's more upgrading software than anything else, both in the stress mechanisms associated with the brain, but also the areas of the brain responsible for skill learning and skill development, motor learning and control, procedural memory, attention. So hopefully that answers your question. It is all of them, but I think we've yet to understand what the most significant mechanism is. If I could theorize, it's probably a combination of the stress mechanisms with the skill learning. And I think skill learning really is one of the underlying factors that is going to improve brain health or mediate brain health. There's been research coming out lately that looks at theater, dance, martial arts, and they all improve the brain via the same pathway, which is really just associated with skill learning. So that's why I'm really big on our industry transforming us from rep counters to skill teachers, and how to understand skill, how to teach skill, how to progress skill, because that seems to really be leading the way for brain health.
And Elspeth, you had also said, what encourages people to try Tai Chi, that you found it kind of difficult to get people to try it. And that's one of the reasons that I created Open the Door to Tai Chi, is to make it accessible to the everyday person. And if you look at this, if you take a look at the Daily Series, which is just an introduction to Tai Chi, it just gives you a way to dip your toe in the water and learn a little bit of it. That's what we're all about at Open the Door to Tai Chi, is you don't have to dive in 100% and accept all the philosophy and become a martial artist. You're allowed to try it. You're allowed to just experience it. And that's what we want to help you do. With the certification of learning how to teach Tai Chi, we help you understand how to make it more accessible so that people do want to try it, so they don't feel intimidated by it. I don't want anyone to be intimidated by it.
Yeah, and I will say that educating people about the brain health benefits of Tai Chi does wonders for behavior change. I've had the most sedentary, stubborn patients, and as soon as I explain the brain benefits of exercise and or Tai Chi, it kind of flips things on its head, and especially if it's related to a pain point. And that's why it's important to work with other allied health professionals, because if you can show data that they are at risk for something and you have a solution, they're going to be more motivated to pursue that solution.
Absolutely.
So I've never had a really hard time. I've had a harder time fulfilling all the demand for Tai Chi because of that, more than convincing people.
Yeah, we do need more instructors. You're correct.
We do. We really
right.
do.
And I think too that Tai Chi is a great opening to exercise. Like you said, some very sedentary people, it's a very easy thing to become, get into, because they don't feel like they're going to get hurt with it. Correct. So it's a great open the door kind of exercise. And I want to encourage everyone that like I said, I've been through that brain health trainer course that Ryan has created, and he also provides some very, very useful tools that you can use in your training sessions, you can use in groups. It expands the whole world of brain health training. Tai Chi is a piece of the puzzle. Obviously, that's a very important piece for me, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. That it's a great starting point, but you really need to get yourself out, figuring out how to make exercise really truly be a part of the brain health training and not just a side effect, not brain health training being a side effect.
You need to open the door to brain health.
I like that, Ryan. Well, Ryan, thank you very much for today. Excellent presentation. We're very pleased that the brain health movement is getting started, and thank you for your piece in that. We will continue to work together to try to help people with this. And I want to respect everybody's time. I know we're just a little bit over an hour, but thank you all for coming today. If you have any questions about the Brain Health Trainer, you can go to brainhealthtrainer.com. You can also contact Ryan or myself. You have my email address, Dianne@taichisystem.com.
Yeah, and we'll provide some follow-up emails with both information and contact information. And through you, Dianne, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Everybody have a great Monday. We'll talk to you later.